Welcome back to MLSsoccer.com's Playoff Central, presented by Samsung Galaxy. Greg Lawless alongside Simon Borg and Andrew Wiebe. We are now post-game. What an amazing event we saw tonight. The Seattle Sounders coming up with a 2-0 victory over the Colorado Rapids in the knockout round for the Western Conference. They book a place in the Western Conference semifinals against who else? The Portland Timbers. What a surprise that ends up being the case in this one. So, guys, let's take a quick recap of some of the key moments here, and it starts actually with Brad Evans getting the first goal for the Seattle Sounders, coming in the 28th minute in this one, and a great finish in the end from Brad Evans.
But inexcusable that they left him all alone there, no one recovering. The Colorado Rapids have to do better in that spot. Deshaun Brown, that was his guy.
Yeah, he was. And Deshaun Brown, I think, did not show up as much as he needed to show up in this one.
I don't know for a fact, but he looked like he was sick. He looked like he was ill out there. There was no speed. There were no runs. He wasn't recovering.
Look, space has to be created by the midfield in some sense. And in this game, I think the Seattle Sounders midfield, we talked about it pregame, that diamond, we weren't sure how it would react. I think it dominated the two-man line back there of Henry Thomas and Nathan Sturgis, and Martin Rivero nowhere to be found.
Yeah, and that was a problem, I think, ultimately for Colorado, is so little possession. Here we see a goal from Brad Evans. It's a great overlapping run, by the way, from Leo Gonzalez on the left side, and then the ball finally falls to Evans, and he drills it into the lower right corner. I think our producer, Jason Sagini, was in the office and said that is a U.S. national team right back finish into the lower corner. A beautiful goal from Evans, and it really sort of rocked CenturyLink. It got them even more energized than they were. There was a lot of pressure, I think, coming into this game on Seattle. Did that goal alleviate some of that pressure for them?
I don't think so. I think they started on a roll in this game. They started well. They were on the backs of Colorado. They weren't giving them any time. And then when they got the ball, their players were ready to play. Lamar Nagel, Eddie Johnson, Clint Dempsey. You saw the interchange, the fullbacks coming up. Early on, it was Yedlin down the right. Then Gonzalez was getting involved on the left. So I think Seattle was very much in the game. Colorado, they were missing. They were missing in this one. It was very disappointing performance from the Rapids.
Well, things changed a little bit for the Rapids after Vicente Sanchez came in. We talked about that in the start of the game. We looked at the lineup and we said no Sanchez in the starting lineup. We only had Martin Rivero, who was going to have to be the creator, the string puller, and he didn't do it.
Look, Martin Rivero did not look like the 2012 Martin Rivero. This is the same guy we've seen this year. Struggle in and out of the lineup, does not have his rhythm. On the ball, he was not the difference maker. And you saw when Torres came in, or Sanchez, it wasn't actually as a midfielder. He played wide right, and they played with 4 forwards, and they were able to bypass and actually use that speed at times. But with Rivero in there, the ball died, and then you see Seattle coming right back at you with pace.
And how many times did the Rapids cough up the ball?
Yeah.
Henry Thomas had an awful game.
I think Atiba Harris is right in that same boat as well.
Atiba Harris, and then Martin Rivero giving up the ball. Look, Gabi Torres was their best player, but he was so far upfield, they could never get to him. I think Torres needed to be at attacking midfield, and I was disappointed that Pareja didn't make that change earlier in the second half.
Well, look, I think, though, the main keys, the positives, if you will, for Seattle that I think we need to think about again, we mentioned it, that midfield and the pressure. You talked about the problems that Rivero had, but the pressure in the midfield in particular for Seattle caused those problems in my mind when I look at it. That was my estimation of this game. That pressure. We saw Alonso stepping up a little higher defensively for pressure. Moffitt, either side of the field that he was on, he was applying pressure. Dempsey was then allowed to stay free, and there was always pressure on the ball.
And guys like Deshaun Brown and Atiba Harris, they weren't able to turn and go at defenders and attack space. So at that point, I think the Rapids needed to be quicker with the ball, launch the ball over the top, for your speed. We never saw the Rapids speed in this game. I was looking forward to it, never saw it.
And that's what's been working against the Sounders recently. It's get over the top, get your strong guys against their guys wide and let them push, let them use their physicality. That's what Deshaun Brown did in that 5-1 beatdown. He never had a chance to do that. For me, the possession starts with those 2 defensive midfielders back there. They're the ones who have to begin things. Find Rivero, that's when you get it wide. It never happened. Sputtering for Colorado.
But look, Seattle also sort of, especially in the first half, you mentioned Yedlin, right? They dominated on the flanks in particular. You talked about not being able to turn. But Yedlin's abilities, let's talk about the right side in particular in this one. Evans at right mid, Yedlin in behind. Their ability to get forward every single time to find the space, whether it's the overlap for Yedlin or Evans sliding out wide as the ball comes into the middle, whether it's to Johnson or even to Nagel. That, to me, was a huge difference in this game.
And with Deshaun Brown, in my estimation, not himself, Chris Clute was all alone. And so Chris Clute, who was usually a weapon for Colorado, was stuck at his left back position, never contributed in the attack. And look, you know how strong this was, and you see here the goal by Evans. You know how strong that right side was because the second half, it completely changed. Andrew and I were talking about this. Yedlin comes out of the game because of an injury. Evans has to move further away from goal to go to right back. And you didn't see the Sounders dangerous anymore.
For me, the key there is Evans' decision-making at that right midfield spot. You know if you're Yedlin that you can make that overlapping run because he's going to make the right choice. He's going to hold the ball when he needs to. He's going to pass it when he needs to. But for me, the right side is what started things, moving it around to the left. You combine, you get Seattle, you get Colorado unbalanced, and then all of a sudden, Eddie Johnson's on that left side, as we saw in the goal, and he's able to find the overlap. There's space there because those guys did it on the right.
Right. Well, speaking of Eddie Johnson, in fact, we actually have him with our own Samantha Yarrick out at CenturyLink Field in Seattle after the game. Just got some questions for him about his goal. Had some questions about what he was celebrating, actually. He did have something underneath his shirt. Don't forget, he had that yellow card, though. He did not want to pull the shirt off and get a second yellow because he had picked up a yellow earlier on.
And John Kennedy Hurtado.
How many times have we seen that? So let's go to Sam, and she's got Eddie Johnson.
All you had in stoppage time and how great it felt to do it in this way, bring your team through to the semifinals.
It's a team effort. We knew it was going to be a difficult game. You know, I've been out for 2.5 weeks. My first game back, it was frustrating. You know, you want to get out there, you try and do too much, and you put too much pressure on yourself. But I felt good this game. I thought we had a good half against LA the last game. We wanted to carry that first half momentum into this game. And it's about taking risks. I had a one-on-one opportunity, and you know, in the box, you want to try and make something happen because if the defender touches you, you go down for a PK. But you know, it was a physical game for me, and I was just trying something, and it worked.
And what is your shirt about?
Oh, one of our equipment managers, Scott, his wife passed away 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to do something special for him, and I was bummed I couldn't do it last game, but I told him this game I got one for him, and she was watching over us tonight, so you know, this is to his family and to the team. And we're going on to the next round.
All right, congratulations. We'll see you Saturday.
See you.
Back to you guys.
Thanks, Sam. And guys, Eddie Johnson, you know, it wasn't the sort of dominating performance from him, but he did get the goal at the end to ice it, of course. And he was a factor as the game progressed over time. And I think that you saw him actually get a little stronger later on once they broke that Colorado pressure that came in the second half.
It was sweet revenge, the goal for him at the very end, because Herman Mera was winning plenty of head balls during the game and was right on his back, and it was a physical battle between the two. Then he gets the goal where he megs Herman Mera and scores a great goal. And I think you saw that exuberant celebration by him where he's on the ground holding his face because it was a phenomenal goal.
Yeah, look, I think Eddie Johnson's job in this game wasn't necessarily all about getting in behind. Lamar Nagel was the guy they left to that. This instance, he does get in behind. You see the mag and a great finish near post. Clinton Irwin won't like that. But for me, Eddie Johnson in this game, it was all about holding the ball. It was all about providing options once they worked it around. And he did that well. He may have been quiet early on. Not quite the goal-scoring opportunities he would have wanted to, but hey, you can see how much it means to the guy there in the goal celebration.
What's important about this win for the Sounders, they did it without Mauro Rosales. A lot of people talking about, hey, Mauro Rosales absent. They did it without Obafemi Martins, not even on the bench in this one because of the groin. So this group was able to win, but you know, how much is it the Seattle Sounders being good? How much is it the Rapids being extremely disappointing in this one and not being at full strength either? You need to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt.
A little bit of a grain of salt, but now there are going to end up being some issues now when they go into the first leg at home again. They'll be back at CenturyLink. You have to imagine it's going to be a packed house at CenturyLink when they take on the Portland Timbers on Saturday. So this is going to be a question for them, though. We saw the red card to Michael Sperning. First of all, let's talk about this red card a little bit. First of all, red card for you or no?
Absolutely a red card. The ball is heading toward goal. The goalkeeper denies a clear goal-scoring opportunity. So I think the referee played it by the book. That has to be a red.
And at this point in the season, I'm not sure if you're a Seattle Sounders fan, you're all that disappointed. Michael Geschperning, something is in his head right now. So, it's the form, it's the being in and out of the lineup. He is not himself. He's not the guy we saw at the beginning of the season. You got to make a change, and this forces it.
Pretty funny, actually, that there was a Timbers fan who actually wasn't so was a little more disappointed. He tweeted out, this is at Football Daddy, who tweeted out, the Timbers are going to appeal Geschperning's red card, and they're going to hope to get him in goal for the conference semifinal.
He was shaky. There were a few moments where we were watching. I mean, I didn't make a big deal out of it because it was raining.
You didn't make a big deal. You were telling us how shaky he was.
But
You were
then when
making
you
a big
see
deal
him
about it.
on that play,
Yeah.
coming off his line, when there was no Rapids player in.
Lack of concentration.
It's all mental, completely
A lack of
mental in that
concentration.
sense.
That's something that can't happen. Now, let's move ahead and look at this Portland game a little bit. And now they're going to not have Geschperning. So Hahnemann comes in. This is a Portland team that is very good. They're showing everything they can do. Don't forget, DeAndre Yedlin not going to be in this one as well. Well, we don't know.
We don't know that.
We don't know
yet.
that.
We don't know that. Give him some time
Injured,
to
came
heal.
out though
Yep.
with his injury. We see it right here. He actually goes up here and probably deserved a little bit of sanctioning himself for that elbow that he throws. I mean, that is something that a disciplinary committee might
It
think
may not
about
even,
looking
yeah,
at
it may not
that
even be
as
the
well.
injury that keeps him out.
Right. So, but he does come down. He twists the ankle. He goes out. So if they're missing him as well, it's a Portland Timbers team with a lot of weapons. How does this Seattle team stack up against the Timbers?
I think not well. And it sounds like I'm killing the Timbers every moment here, but I just don't. I didn't see a great performance necessarily from Seattle in terms of their play. I think Portland. The saving grace for Seattle is, I think, in this matchup against Portland, because it's a rivalry, because it's a derby, I think that gives Seattle hope. Whereas if this was, if this was any other opponent, I don't know, any other one seed in the West, I don't know that Seattle would be given so much of a chance. But because it's a derby, because there's emotion involved, because there's the big crowds, I think that's what helps Seattle here.
Certainly that first game in Seattle benefits them, but I think the big difference between these two games is going to be Diego Chara and Will Johnson in that midfield. That's a completely different look. They're able to cover so much more ground, and they're actually goal threats. Maybe not Chara, but Will Johnson certainly. And you look at the freedom they're able to give to Diego Valeri. Diego Valeri is not going to have the same kind of game that Martin Rivera did. They're going to have a much, much more focused performance from those defenders in the middle for Seattle. And they may not be able to do it.
Portland's going to be much better on the ball than Colorado was today.
Yep.
Absolutely, that's for sure. So now the Colorado Rapids, they don't get through. How do they assess their season when they look at this season? They get into the knockout round in Pareja's second year, right? And so is this a successful season for them? Is this still part of the building? Are they building up? How do we assess them?
It's very much a success. They found an identity, in my opinion. And in addition to finding an identity, they've identified players on which they're going to build on. Whether it's Clute at left back, whether it's Gabi Torres, their new acquisition up front. We'll see, hopefully, Vicente Sanchez come back. I think despite his age, he has a lot to add. Shane O'Neill, this was a breakout season for him. So a lot of pieces there for Colorado to build on. The question is, will they have Oscar Pareja there to build on it? The rumors continue strong that, might he go to Dallas? Is there a buyout clause? Is his family, involved here? Do they want to stay in Dallas? So we'll have to see this saga with Oscar Pareja, how it plays out. But they have building blocks.
Look, I'm not sure I completely agree with you on the foundation side. They've played so many different ways this season. They've changed personnel so many times.
They're a 4-3-3.
No, to a certain extent. But at the end of the year, you have different guys in different spots. Who falls in there? I think next year is when you can see, hopefully, him decide these are the right ones. Martin Rivera, will he be back around or will it be Dylan Powers' team? I think it all depends on who you give the reins to. It could go either way.
But we didn't even mention Powers and Deshaun Brown. With all the other names I gave you, they have a base. They have a squad. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, I think they have a squad.
No, I'm not saying that.
All right, well, let's hear a little bit more from the Seattle Sounders now. We've got Sam Yarrick out again in Seattle with Adam Moffat.
We got to get a pint.
A pint. Well, congratulations, Adam. How does it feel to not only break your 7-game winless streak in front of this crowd, moving on to the semis, but also to post a shutout?
Yeah, that was big for us. We spoke about it all week. It's playing to zero, not giving anything up, and thought we'd done a great job. It got a little bit shaky at the end, obviously, but yeah, we're delighted. We knew once we get in here, anything can happen, and we played well tonight, and yeah, we'll look forward to the next game.
You talk a little bit about the physicality of this game and how intense it was, yellow cards being thrown left and right, and then a red card in the final for your goalie.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of challenges. You know, it was going to be the last game of the season for one of us, so you hope that people are going to give it everything they've got. And fair play to Colorado, they came out and they gave it everything they had, and I was happy we got the result. But great fight shown from us, and that's what you need in the playoffs. You need to fight hard, and sometimes, you know, you'll get your yellows and reds, but it's the aim is to win the cup, and yeah, we got a good start.
All right, well, congratulations. We'll see you on Saturday.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Back to you guys.
All right, well, the Seattle Sounders now will stay at home and they'll take on their rivals, the Portland Timbers, Saturday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. It is going to be a great one. I'm just going to share one great little tweet that we got in here. This is from GX Robillard. I don't know if he actually pronounces it that way, but and if I screwed it up, I'm sorry, Xavier. Anyway, my Timbers FC playing Sounders FC in the conference semis need to cut booze, fried food, need to increase exercise. Heart can't take this. He's a Timbers fan.
Well, I think that'll all be back Saturday. So take a break until then, get it all running right, and then on Saturday you'll probably do it all again.
Anyway, the game 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday night. Seattle at home against Portland Timbers in the Western Conference semifinal first leg. Tomorrow night, Thursday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time will be the Eastern Conference knockout round. Houston Dynamo at home facing the Montreal Impact. This is going to be a great one, and we will have another live event here on MLSsoccer.com Playoff Central presented by Samsung Galaxy. We're going to have a live show in pregame starting at 8 o'clock. We're then going to do a post-game show just like we did here. Hopefully we'll get it a little bit sooner up, a couple of minutes right after the final whistle. Guys, quick, really quick, give me a thought about tomorrow night's game. Get us all pumped for this one.
I think the Houston Dynamo will win this game. But the question is, I think Montreal will play the long ball, try to counter. I thought Colorado would do the same. They didn't. So who knows if Montreal will.
To me, low scoring, 1-0 Houston. They keep moving on. You don't bet against Dom Kinnear's teams in the playoffs.
Well, it is supposed to be a little bit rainy, so we'll see if the rain down in Houston. In fact, there was sort of a monsoon or a storm down there today, so we'll see how much the weather affects that one. Again, we will be on live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on MLSsoccer.com for the live show, pregame show, and postgame tomorrow. If you have any tweets or questions or comments, hit us up on Twitter. Use the hashtag HOUVMTL, and we'll start combing through those tomorrow and start bringing them onto the show tomorrow night. That's all we have. So for Andrew and for Simon, I am Greg, and thanks very much for joining us here on MLSsoccer.com's Playoff Central presented by Samsung Galaxy. Good night, everybody.